The following is a conversation with John Faig, a top voice in educational technology, a startup mentor, and an AI enthusiast, who also serves as a RevOps consultant. With his unique blend of business, technical, and educational expertise, John shares invaluable insights on becoming a data-driven company and the crucial role of relentless experimentation in the thriving world of EdTech. In the final episode, my guest delves into the transformative potential of AI in school infrastructure and the benefits of data-driven decision-making for EdTech startups. He explains how AI can enhance interactions among teachers, students, and parents, while also addressing the ethical considerations and risks involved. John touches on the historical lack of significant innovation in education and shares his optimism about AI's rapid evolution. The conversation wraps up with insights on the importance of collecting educational data and the potential for AI to improve educational outcomes. So, if you're aiming to convert your EdTech challenges into successful outcomes, this episode is a must listen. So, speaking about the future, maybe let's wrap this up with a few trends, maybe one general trend that you're observing right now in EdTech and maybe in technology in general that you find most promising.
I am excited about an AI-enabled school infrastructure. So what that means to me is the AI products working in conjunction between the various stakeholders. So that means teacher, parent, and student, right? So the interaction of we'll call them the bots, will be more significant because you'll have now more information about the students, right? So student comes to your school, you know anything about them, maybe you know a little bit, but if the bot has been used by that student for some time, he comes and the bot comes and you ask the bot, tell me about this new student. What are his learning preferences? What are his strengths and challenges? Give me something. And so what we have now is more visibility into all of the learning attributes, because the parent will also have some, right? Now, the AI will be helpful because you'll be seeing more of the learning process. For example, teacher develops a lesson plan or takes a lesson plan they've had and uses AI to modify it for this particular class based on what the teacher knows about that class. How does the teacher know? Well, they may have polled and profiled the students, or in the future, you'll just ask all of the bots who represent those students and those assistants, tell me about this class. Tell me what they like, sports, cooking, whatever, and I'm going to tailor my lesson plan to them, and or maybe I'll give them a generic lesson plan and let them tailor it on their own. So now we're having student voice in the curriculum like we've never had before. I mean, we talk about student-centered learning and helping education, but we never ask students. And we don't get feedback from them either. So teachers are not really, they don't get a lot of feedback on, hey, that was a great lesson you did yesterday, or that really left me very confused. Well, we'll see more of the learning process because at home, when the kids go home at the end of the day, they'll ask their bot for assistance. And the teacher will see what they asked. So the teacher will quickly know this lesson really hit because I'm looking at the questions the students asked at night, and they were really good questions about how to learn more. They weren't trying to clear up misconceptions and areas of confusion. Of course, the converse is also possible. Teacher does a lesson and then thinks the lesson really hit. No questions asked. Kids look like they're engaged. Great. At home, thousands of questions, huge amount of confusion. And so the sum total of all these bots working together will provide more of the learning process that we currently do not see. And most of it is in kids' heads, and we only see it when it comes out on paper in the form of a work product or an assessment. So now there's more transient, continual information that's going to make the whole system better, meaning parents can help their kids more effectively, teachers can teach more effectively, kids can learn more effectively. So I don't know where and when that will occur, but I'm really enthusiastic about students having conversations with arguably static content. I mean, let's face it, the curriculum and standards in schools and the tasks they're asked to do and the worksheets are fairly static. So they're really learning on a fairly static base of content. And that's perfect for this generation of AI. It really brings static content to life. And the next generation that'll include more dynamic content is even better. But I think we can really affect change because, as I said, the vast majority of what goes on in the school is static. And as much as we, claim it's not, I mean, I've taught in a school, I've had a lot of schooling, my kids went to schools, and, it's pretty static. If you don't think so, just ask look at the revenue of the textbook manufacturers.
Basically, what you're saying is that AI bots will become a part of school infrastructure, and you don't know in what time it will happen, but it will surely happen. And I agree with you on that subject. But what about the risks? People are afraid. People don't understand AI. We don't know what happens with the data that we are feeding to those models. Do you think that we will simply start to neglect those problems, or do we have some challenges here to solve?
Well, I mean, there's difference between a generic large language model and then an adaptation of it in a school. I mean, there's ways to make sure that the data that you don't want doesn't go anywhere. I mean, you can anonymize students. They could be numbers and not information. You could obviously have a gatekeeper to make sure they don't type in their address or something. So you can look for keywords and pre-process the prompt. So I'm not worried about that. We do that already in schools with respect to the search engines, right? So we monitor kids do in the Google suite, things they say and how they communicate with each other. And then on the generic search engine side, we also monitor that. So we don't prevent information from going places necessarily because there's nowhere for it to go. I mean, you could type it into a search engine here because there's sort of a more conversational interface. There could be situations where they want to volunteer that information. We can manage that. I have no doubt that that's an easier problem. As far as whether they're effective and all the related problems of hallucinations and so forth, I think that that's also controllable because the scope of content that your bot will be talking about is somewhat limited, right? The hallucinations come when you take all sorts of data, terabytes of data that was trained on the internet. But I'm optimistic that if you were just teaching 7th grade history, that you could provide scaffolding around that such that the bot can say, I don't know the answer to this, or you're supposed to figure this out, not me. You would want the kids asking, the question and short-circuiting the learning process. So I think I'm more optimistic now than I have been in a long time. I think the infrastructure will take a while to get there because there's 15 or 20 what I'll call primary or secondary AI related companies in EdTech. And their initial thrust was one of the 3 constituencies I mentioned: parent, teacher, student. So their center of gravity is to help one or more of those. But I think having a network of them for all the stakeholders and digitizing more of the learning process and getting more non-academic information from students and parents with respect to their son or daughter is going to make the system smarter. I think schools have struggled to do better because the system is bureaucratic and purposely built to be rigid, right? So I'm more worried about the learning loss of students than I am the negatives related to large language models and AI.
I feel like I have so many questions more left, but let's leave them for another occasion, maybe for now.
There'll always be more questions.
Yeah, they always will be, but let's keep fingers crossed that that the future with AI bots and as an infrastructure at schools will come to fruition, and it will be faster than later, hopefully. And hopefully it will bring value and help students learn, not only bring value to companies that are creating those tools.
I have no doubt. I mean, technology moves at a rapid rate, mostly because it exists outside of education, right? All the initiatives that have started in education, where there's not much innovation within education because of the aforementioned structures and social structures and bureaucracies, and nobody stands to benefit. There's really not a lot of metrics. So if you do something, how do you know that it was a good idea? And you won't have any return on investment data to show other schools that they might want to use it. So, so there's a lot of reasons why education doesn't innovate. In AI, it's happening outside of education. So that's a better way to do it because there's more money, and it might not be perfect for education, but people will bring it into education who know something about education, and that's what we're seeing. Just in a year, maybe 2022, let's call it a year and a half, 2 years, the interest in it has exploded. Right? And I can't remember anything. I've been in education for 20 years. And I was always relatively tech savvy as a teacher because of my background. And also the fact that I came into education from another industry and I realized that something was wrong. I was like, okay, what everybody's doing here, I'm not sure is the right way to do it. So I, had some formal learning and had some informal learning to see what I should be doing instead of just copying everybody else. I haven't seen anything that has moved the needle. I mean, it's I've seen a presentation given as a joke at a technology conference where they're like, projectors replace the overhead projector, right? Right, and whiteboards with erasable markers replace chalkboards, right? And then smart boards came on the scene, and every classroom needed to have them, even though they're unreliable and not all that used, and used more as projectors than kids actually going up there to
engage.
But also the research is pretty good about it. An active classroom doesn't have one focal point, right? So to have one focal point and have it be a technology product or not, like a smart board, you're not making a more engaging classroom. And it's
And why AI will be different?
It's different because it's moving quickly. It's you're getting more knowledge. We now have RAG, so we're getting those models that can go out and augment itself, which means it has to have some self-reflection to say, hey, what can I answer? What can't I? And then when I get something I can't answer, I'll go get some information. So the whole idea of sort of metacognitive, what can I answer, what I can't, where do I find information, that whole circular growth of content, I think, is really interesting. And I have no doubt that people will build specific subsystems that mimic the brain. And so it's moving fast. It's going to get smarter. And the great thing is it's moving faster than anything in the last 20 years. I can't even point to something in the last 20 years that was a significant watershed event in education where I was like, wow, this is a new world. And whether it was some sort of new pedagogical approach or some initiative or a product or a math curriculum. I mean, just looking at all those things, just the stuff that people got excited about or managed to spend more money on. Yeah, I just don't think that any of that moves the needles relative to where I am here with my excitement in AI. It's also interesting too because I can't really see the end point. I just know it's going to move in the right direction because there's so many people working on it in so many industries outside of education, which I like. My one complaint about education as an outsider and an insider is we're in the learning business. Our industry sector, along with higher ed and workplace, is called education. Right? However, I always found it unusual that everybody else in the world that's not in education, all the big companies, government organizations, everybody else never comes knocking on our door and asks, hey, we have lots of people in my company or my organization. How can we help them learn more efficiently? Right? They're just that fact alone, and I have more friends in other industries than I do in education. And so the fact that nobody was ever like, hey, you're in education, let me ask you something, right? Is just a form of invalidation as far as what we do.
Why is that? And why is it about a trust or distrust maybe to education because people don't believe in the education system? So why should I ask?
It's a combination of they don't really believe it. People speak politely about it and positively about it, but everybody's been through it. And so they've seen, the way the dog food is made. And obviously they'll talk politely about it, but they don't like how the dog food is made or they don't like the end product. So that's one. And also just no innovation. Schools don't have an innovation budget in general. There's very hard to get people together. They have precious little time and space to think about things other than their day-to-day activities. So just the structure and the lack of goals means no innovation, right? If I told you had to improve some metric in your school, you could formulate a plan to do so and figure out resources you need and a couple of strategies to try. That lack of goals means that there's sort of a lack of accountability and improvement that other industries have. Other industries, you want to be more efficient on the cost side. You probably want to sell more on the revenue side, introduce a new product, right? So there's goals. There's sort of things that even if you're working at a low-level position at some big company, the big things that could be done to improve revenue or make the cost side more efficient, right? That sort of metric approach and moving forward every day, let's get better every day, doesn't exist in education because nobody's sure what to get better at. It seems to be like, hey, let's just tread water and survive. And so I think it's a lack of metrics. I think that you don't know how to improve. You don't have metrics to improve. Your test scores have been outsourced to other companies. Your grades are inflated to the point where they're not credible anymore. And so I just feel like as a school, if I were thinking about it like a business, and it's probably a case study to look at maybe some of the for-profit or charter schools, who are my best teachers? And on what metrics, right? And probably a handful of teachers are master teachers across different capabilities and competencies. But who are my best, classroom management people? Who are my best EdTech people? Who are my best assessment creators? Who are my best project-based learning people? Like, who in my school, there's no way a big company doesn't know competencies across all their employees, right? And obviously, they probably churn out some portion of them that no longer fit or don't have competencies, right? So that churn and that ability to manage people, I don't think it exists in the school. I don't know. I mean, schools have always been highly resistant to evaluations and surveys and things, but that lack of data, I think, hurts, everybody. And so it exists in other industries. Like, I don't care what company you go to. I don't know that they do formal data collection, but I guarantee if you went to the head of whatever department and said, who are your top 20% people and who are your bottom 20% people, that person could tell you. I don't know that schools can tell who their top 20% teachers are and who the bottom 20% of teachers are.
I feel like it's a very complex subject. It's not so easy because comparison between business and school is always like, I really like the point that you're and speaking about data, that I strongly feel that they should be measured more at schools. But on the other hand, you say that schools lack in innovation, and the question is: are they at all should innovate? Because it's not their goal. The business should, or okay, the business is measured because they should be profitable. School has different goals, so maybe they shouldn't innovate, and maybe that's why they don't. Okay. So maybe we are trying to force schools to do different things.
That's a fair point. I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, I could also soften the word innovate to just be upgrade. So schools have been compared to conveyor belts, right? And so, you know, boxes going down a conveyor belt, and each teacher for each grade or each subject is sitting there, you know, helping the package along the conveyor belt, right? So I use the term upgrade or improve instead of innovate because the data is wildly clear that more packages are falling off the conveyor belt than they ever have, right? So if you want to call that innovation, fine. If you want to call it improvement, whatever. But the problem is, and the reason they can't turn it around is they never have had to fix things. So they've never had to improve or innovate. Therefore, now that they have a situation where the panic button has been hit, they don't know what to do. They don't even know what to change. And you know, schools are systems. So things you do affect other aspects of the school. So when you want to make a change, it's pretty dramatic. It's not like, oh, let's just change the textbook here, or let's replace a couple of teachers there. Like if you really want to move the needle, you really have to think deeply about all the related parts and where is the problem, right? Is my low graduation rate because there's a grade of teachers that really turn kids off, and that is from there on, it doesn't matter who they have because those teachers have fried the kids, or what is the problem? Like what's the nature of the problem? And I think it's, you know, you have to analyze the learning journey. And my guess is going to be multiple things. My guess is going to be a couple things go wrong at each grade level and each teacher. And it's a sum total, almost like the EdTech customer journey. Like collect the little data points because it's not obvious to people. But I would say the more data you collect on students, and this could be where AI comes in, you'll be able to ask more questions. You know, what grade was the student most engaged in? What, you know, where did the student seem to learn the most? Whatever that means. You know, forget grades. Where did the student learn the most? You know, where did he learn the least? Where was he challenged? Where was he not challenged? Like you'll be able to find information that you never had before. And so that's really the key to improving the school. You'll be able to say, you'll be able to interrogate the, you know, the teacher bot and the student bot and the parent bot. And right now you don't have that information because all you have like survey data, but that never helps. If that helped, other than school climate and get a feel for whether people are happy or not, you would already get it. Yep. My bet is you're going to find the detailed breadcrumbs across all those, across the schools, the grade levels, the teachers, the pedagogies, and you're going to then be able to make potential improvements. Of course, you don't have to, but right now you don't have any of that data. You don't know. I mean, there's just nobody who has that 360-degree view of a student on a 13-year journey through probably 100 teachers or more, right?
Yeah.
Even if you could evaluate the teachers, that wouldn't help you necessarily because you probably wouldn't know why a student liked or didn't like that teacher, right? You know, what was it? It was the learning activities weren't good. The teacher wasn't friendly. You know, what was it? So all that stuff is, you know, I'm not pushing for evaluations and things. I am pushing for introspection using the data that the bots collect so we can have more data from 13 years, or more in the nursery school, so the, students in the US go to school for 14, 15 years. And yet we know very little about them when they're done. Parents know a lot, but teachers, because the teachers are segmented, one of the better impacts of teaching from John Hattie is a student who has a teacher for 2 years in a row. Imagine that. High impact, relationship building, relationship very high on the list. Well, how do you get a relationship? You teach them for more than 2 years. How many schools do that? Almost none.
Right. It all adds up to a pretty compelling picture where AI maybe, just maybe, is a missing piece in this puzzle, in this education puzzle, that we have all those information around, because education, of course, is about information. Evaluation is about data. And now maybe we have this missing piece that is able to connect all those dots and bring us insight from those information.
You just hit the nail on the head. Large language models continue to evolve based on the underlying data set and the data set that's given them. That is in stark contrast to the way we build systems, both in school and outside of school. Software developer, data model, business logic, application layer. So schools have built systems and they serve the purposes they have to collect whatever data they need for government reporting or financial reporting or whatever. Systems work exactly as they were designed. What we're going to take advantage of, a system that's a little more amorphous, that's a little more of a net, that catches things on the fly. And we didn't build a data model to figure out how to make schools better. And we didn't build a business logic to figure out how to use that. And we didn't build an interface to it. We're just collecting conversations, and we will infer insights from that. If we had to wait for people to build those systems, they wouldn't be able to, because you would never get people to agree what's got to be in the data model, what are we going to measure, what buttons go where, where's this information coming from, what systems do I have to sync it with and integrate it with? It'd be a nightmare. So this system, by its very nature, provides a unique opportunity, because it's not a standard traditional multi-stack application development process. It's not so rigid. It's not spec'd out. It's kind of on the fly. And I think that's going to be the key to having it used in education.
Right. Thank you for your time.
Yes.
Thank you for this conversation.
I look forward to connecting again.